Okay, that's the graphic we're waiting for.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So thank you everyone for being patient. We're going to move to our graphic went away. Is that a problem?
No, we see you.
Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going then.
Okay.
So we're going to start the Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. It is August 3rd, 2020. First, we will, as we're calling the meeting to order, we will say Pledge of Allegiance. I don't know if we have the flag graphic. You can locate one.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes, yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we'll do the pledge. Ralph will join in when he gets there.
All right, let's do it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the
of the United States of America and to the republic
which
stands
one
one
nation
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For all.
Thank you. And Luann will do roll call.
Fowler,
Yes.
Ms. Harlow,
Yes.
Mr. Havel,
Yes.
Mr. Horvath,
Here.
Mr. Wolf. I see him.
Just
Wow.
nod.
Here.
Ralph, can you hear us? Dean, are we good with having the visual with Ralph?
Followed by pound.
There's Ralph.
He's got it on mute.
Okay, Ralph's mic's coming through. I'm not sure why he's not able to hear us. So he's definitely connected to audio.
All right.
Okay.
Your participant ID.
I think he's trying to dial back into the meeting.
I'm gonna mute him temporarily. If you guys have a way to tell him, or maybe it's something. It must be something on his end with speakers or Zoom coming out, because we can hear him fine.
Okay.
Okay, I'm on now. I had to turn on my phone because my computer's not working correctly.
Okay. Thank you, Ralph. We just did Pledge of Allegiance. We did roll call. Luann was asking if you're here.
I may not be. I don't know. But let's go.
Okay. First, I need a motion to approve the agenda for the meeting tonight.
So
Motion.
moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay. Next, if you are an attendee and you are going to speak for or against any of these tonight, I would like for you to raise your right hand and affirm that you are going to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. I'm going to say that's some virtual yeses. The first appeal that we're going to hear is BZA 2020-07. And I'm going to turn this over to John.
Yes, thank you. Hello, everyone. Just give me a quick thumbs up if you can hear me to make sure I'm coming through clearly. Great, thanks. So this is my first time presenting in front of this board, and it's a pleasure. I've written several reports for the township, and it's kind of nice now to be able to actually present one in front of you folks. So this first case is located at 11988 Timberlake Drive. And this variance request is to allow a detached fireplace in the side yard. It's already been constructed. The appellants are Kevin and Julie Carnes, and the site is about a half an acre. It's in the A residence district. The fireplace itself is 5 feet wide, 5 foot by 7 inches wide, and 7 foot high. It's located on the southeast corner of the home within the side yard. I'm going to quickly share my screen to show the site plan. And hopefully you all can see the site plan. I've zoomed in to show the location of the fireplace, and I have my little magnifying glass on that fireplace. Hopefully everyone can see that okay. So the fireplace would be, it's already been constructed, like I said, and it would be about 4.5 feet from this property line. This property is kind of unique in that the rear of the house actually kind of faces the street. There's a driveway that wraps around to the side, garage entry, and the front of the house is actually what's typically the rear. So the most important thing to know here is the fireplace would be about 4.5 feet off of the side yard, and to meet code, it would have to be located in the rear yard. It would have to be 5 feet from the property lines. So that's basically all I have in a nutshell. I'll be glad to try to answer any questions, and I will unshare my screen unless you want me to keep the site plan up.
John, how did this come to us if it's already been constructed?
So I believe one of the neighbors in the community contacted the zoning inspector for the area, who is Emily Whitty. And Emily went out and saw that the fireplace had been constructed and likely wrote them a violation notice and told them they'd have to go in front of this board to get it approved as a variance.
And the two violations are the distance from the property line, 4.5 versus 5, and being on the side yard versus being in the backyard.
I believe it's considered just one violation in that it has to be in the rear yard. We just make a note that even if it was considered the rear yard, that it's still too close to the property line. But I believe the way the report was written is it's in the side yard and it's not permitted to be in the side yard.
Okay.
John, this is Byron Fowler. I know it's not shown on the site plan, but do we have a sense of this is an encroachment against that property line? And my question is, how close to that property line does that neighbor have its building, its house?
It's very close. If you can see here, this is the corner of the home. I believe it's around 10 feet to the property line. So this fireplace is sitting about 15 feet, maybe even closer to their house. I do have an aerial photo that I could share.
Yeah, I was asking about the neighbor's house. How close it is it to the neighbor's house?
Yeah, it would be 15 feet from the neighbor's house.
Okay, so they're set off from the property line about 10 feet.
Yes.
Okay.
And John, how long has this fireplace been there?
I'm not sure.
Well, we'll ask the owner that.
But here, hopefully you can see this aerial photo. The corner of the house is about here, and you know the fireplace is sitting here, so you can see it's very close.
Okay. Does anybody else have questions for John at this moment?
Not at the moment.
Okay. John, since you're new, I'm going to let you know, we like to reserve the right to call you back up here, just like we do to Brian.
I'm not going anywhere.
Okay. So this is where we are going to open it up. I'm not sure, I believe I saw Kevin Carnes in the attendees. I'm assuming you want to speak on behalf of this appeal. And I'm going to allow you to talk. Kevin, you are unmuted at the moment. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear us?
Yes. Is this Kevin and Julie Carnes?
Yes, it is. We're the owners of the property that has the fireplace.
Okay. And you guys were sworn in, you
Raised our right hand, yes.
okay, thank you. Please go ahead.
Our subdivision has very unusual lots. It was Homerama for 2 different years way back when it was first built. So not all of the homes sit square on the lots. And a couple of them, several of them are 2 houses deep. So you have a house sitting right behind you, which we are one of those houses. We have a house sitting right behind us, which when we built our house, we turned it so that we would have a more larger backyard, not realizing that we would be violating zoning regulations by our backyard being against the street, which is considered the front yard. I think that makes sense. We finished the fireplace a little over 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. So our neighbor has been there for that entire time, and he was there for the building of our house as well. When we built it, we weren't obviously aware of the zoning issues. We were putting on extension things into our backyard, like the fireplace, to make it more what we want it to be. When we completed the fireplace and the decking and stuff that was back there, we redid the entire landscaping and planted lots of evergreens to create more of a barrier and to finish off the lot and improve the quality of it and what it looks like from the street. We have at least 5 or 6 emails from neighbors who say that they love the landscaping. Most of them didn't even know we had a fireplace there, and they have no issues against the zoning being approved for the fireplace. Our neighbor's house does sit how far low? Substantially lower than our house. It isn't a right next door neighbor. We look at his roof and he has a 2-story house. So it's a difference in topography than a normal subdivision when you think about where the fireplace is located. We would consider it a hardship, an extreme hardship, if we were asked to remove the fireplace because of the price that would be involved and the landscaping. We wouldn't be able to get to it. We'd have to find ways around trees, etc. That it's not an easy fix to just remove it. Does anybody have any questions that we could help? There were photos and such sent to the township that are photos of the landscaping and the view from the street and what the fireplace looks like. If somebody has those to share, I see some people are looking at them, I think.
Yes, we all received those ahead of this meeting. Everyone on the board received those. So that's kind of what we're thumbing through. You see our foreheads, we're looking at.
Hey, John, I got a question for you. When the housing permit was approved, would not the knowledge that the back of the house was the front and the front of the back be understood? And by the fact that the permit got approved, it kind of said the city, the township is okay with that orientation?
So when the permit was approved to build the house, I would hope that staff would have said, you know, this may cause you a problem in the future because your front yard is the yard between your house and Timberlake Drive. And the way the house is oriented, if I'm sure the owner considers it the rear, but technically it's the front. But I don't know what kind of conversation was had at that time when the house was constructed.
Okay. Secondly, when they were putting on these additional structures, the patios, I'm assuming is what she was referring to, would she have not had to get a permit for that at that time? And would that not have been an opportunity to tell these folks, hey, you're putting your deck in your front yard versus your backyard, et cetera?
So the difference between, and this is our zoning administrator, Brian Snyder's interpretation, the difference between the deck, and I believe there's a hot tub as well, is that those are attached to the home. So those are considered to be part of the house and they have to meet the front yard setback, which they do. In this case, the fireplace is not considered to be attached by our zoning administrator, who obviously makes those interpretations. And that's why it cannot be in the front yard. So when they got their permits to do the deck and hot tub, we approved those because they were attached and they met the front and side yard setbacks. Does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Are we still on, Mike?
Yes.
Yes, you are.
The actual violation notice came after the approval was granted for the permit to build the deck. And it was almost 6 months after the deck permit was approved and granted. And the deck was in final phases of construction when Emily came and gave us the violation notice for the fireplace. So the fireplace was there when she was there for the deck as well. So
Or when an inspector had been on our property numerous times for the deck. And then all of a sudden we got flagged for the fireplace. And the fireplace has been there for 2 years. And
it's in aerial photos now.
the neighbor who complained, it's been there for 2 years.
Okay. Do you guys, Kevin and, I'm sorry, Julie, I had to look at the paper.
Sorry.
Do you have any more comments? Does anyone for the board have questions for them?
I have just one, and that is the complaining neighbor. Is it the one whose building is 15 feet away?
Yes, 15 feet and a significant drop.
I just wanted to be sure that that's who the complainer is.
I'm assuming, I don't know. We don't know who. We were told by the inspector that the reason we got flagged was she was coming out to try and do an inspection on something and happened to notice the fireplace. We were not aware that a neighbor had called in a complaint. That is news to us.
Okay.
And I'm just curious, what was the complaint?
I don't know.
Are you asking me,
I
staff?
ask anybody who knows.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not aware of what the complaint is. I'm not even sure if a complaint was filed. All I know is that at one point when Emily Whitty went out there, she noticed the fireplace and it was deemed a detached structure at that time, which is supposed to be in the rear yard. Those are the specifics that I know.
And isn't it for our purposes relevant whether or not a complaining neighbor is actually here for this meeting to complain?
Or that there was a formal complaint.
Unless it was a formal complaint, but we don't have news of that.
John, one other point, it was raised that the inspector had been on the property to look at zoning for a deck. Do we know that in fact the issue of the citation was dated after that visit?
I do not have that information. I'm not sure at what point when the inspection took place. I'm not sure if the deck and the fireplace were inspected at the same time. I don't have those specifics.
Do the Carnes?
Yes, they were not inspected at the same time. The fireplace, my husband's looking for the documentation to give you dates, but we were building the extension onto the deck, and an inspector had been out several times. They had inspected and approved the footers. They had inspected and approved some of the other building and the framing. And we were just waiting for our contractor to finish one section of one piece of it, a rather small piece, before we were going to call in for our final inspection to come out. And evidently he had some issues and had a delay when he would plan to finish it, which Emily, I guess the inspector that came out, she said she was investigating because a final inspection had not been requested. And so she came out to look to see if we had just neglected to do that step, which we had not. We were waiting for the deck to be completed in order to call in for the final inspection. And at that time, she gave us the notice on our door that the fireplace was in violation of zoning code.
Okay.
So there had been a few inspectors already on the property.
Yeah, I have a question for the Carnes. Well, on the original plans for the deck, was the fireplace part of that?
No, it was already existing. So when we went for the permit, we didn't realize that we needed to have the fireplace drawn on the plans.
Okay, so the fireplace came first, and then you built the deck.
Yes.
Yes, about a 2-year gap in
Okay.
between the two.
Okay.
Yeah, but I
John,
believe
I
Emily,
have a question for you. I have a question for John. The fireplace, if it was attached to the deck, would that have been an issue?
If Brian Snyder made the determination that the fireplace was attached to the house, it
I mean,
probably
to the deck,
to the deck
to the
would be
deck, because-
attached to the house.
to the house.
I believe it would still have to meet the side yard setback of that district, which I do not believe it does. Because
Right, the side yard.
anything attached to the structure has to still meet the setbacks of the district.
Correct,
Now,
correct.
this-
I just want, it was just a regular question. If it was attached to the deck, it would be considered part of the house, attached to the house, correct?
Yes, but probably still in violation of that side yard setback.
Correct, but it's part of the house, okay.
Yes. And again, he determined that it was not attached to the house.
No, I understand it. I'm just saying if it was in any portion attached to that and met the side yard setbacks and the front yard setback, it would be a legal structure.
Correct,
It would be part of the house, okay.
correct.
Well, let's be clear on one point. Isn't the side yard violation 6 inches?
I don't have the
4.5
side yard setbacks for the A district in front of me. I know in the jurisdiction of like Green Township and other townships, it's 15 feet. And I know Symmes code's a little bit different. I can look it up. It'll take me just a couple minutes. But typically the A district side yard setback is 15 feet. So it would be in violation of,
Yeah, but
no, it's actually 5 feet in the complaint. It's 5 feet in the complaint, section 351.2-1 has to be, shall be no closer than 5 feet.
Yeah.
that's for a detached accessory structure. I'm talking about the principal structure, and anything attached to it would have to meet the side yard setback of the district, which I believe is 15 feet, and I can look it up. I have the code here. I just need to thumb through it.
That's all right.
I'll do that now, because by the time another question comes up, I might have that answer.
Well, before you go, I'm a little confused there. I thought you said Brian's conclusion was that it's not attached to the house.
Correct.
So this would not be a principal structure then, would it?
Correct. I was trying to answer Mr. Wolf's
Right.
question. If it was attached to the house, would it be in violation? And I believe it
Right.
would be in violation of the principal side yard setback, which
In a
I
big
believe is
way.
15, but I'm going to look it up because I can do it right here from my computer. So just take me a minute.
No, my question was just a generic question. Understanding that if it was attached in any way to the deck, it would have been considered part of the house.
Yes, the
But
answer
now
to that is yes.
It's actually a separate structure, an auxiliary structure on the property,
Correct.
is what Brian is saying.
That's correct.
So in that context, the requirement is 5 feet, and I thought I heard earlier in this conversation that the actual distance is 4.5.
Yes, and it has to
4.6.
be in the rear yard.
I understand that.
Yes,
So it's a side yard setback violation of 6 inches.
No,
And
it's,
pardon?
It's 4.39 inches, it looks like,
Yeah,
off of the
under 5
property
inches.
line.
All right.
So it's less than a half, it's more
Okay.
than a half a foot, but we consider it a half a foot.
Okay.
Okay,
We might be splitting hairs here, and I'll split another one. As I understood it, again, earlier in the conversation, that the house next door is 10 feet from the property line, which if it's the principal structure, its distance requirement is 15, and it's a violation as well. Maybe an inherited violation or whatever, but it's not set back adequately in its own right. Do I understand that correctly?
It could be a non-conforming structure, and that estimate of 10 feet, if you were to do a survey, it very well could be 15.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
Okay,
And just, I did look up the information. The principal structure has to be 15 feet from the side yard. You do have a side yard setback of 15 feet for the principal structure in the A district.
all right.
So in reality, I'm just using my scale on this thing here. If that's 15, if the corner of the neighbor's house is 15 feet away, it is actually, it's 15, so you have 15, and, you have about 25 feet from the corner of the fireplace to the corner of the house. That's as close as the fireplace is to the neighbor's house. Just giving you some parameters.
Okay.
Kevin, Julie, is there anything else we ought to know about this situation?
I think one of the big reasons why we constructed the fireplace was for an aesthetic reason, because our back patio, the patio for our basement, it would walk right out and we would look directly at our neighbor's front door. And so as a means to create a privacy buffer without asking for a fence, we thought a structure with a fireplace, as well as the trees and all of the landscaping that we invested in, would be a much nicer solution for our neighbor, as well as for any future home buyer that buys our house. The trees are all evergreen, so there is no concern from our standpoint that in the winter you will see any more than you do today. And so we really were trying to just create a place where it was much more private for our neighbor, but also private for us. Right. And, you know, our neighbor actually came over during the construction and stood on our deck and looked over at his house and said, wow, my roof needs some work. So, you know, that's the difference in the height, is that our deck just literally looks out at the top of his house. So it was really just an issue of, we wanted to create space and create that privacy for both parties. And I think we've done a very successful job at that at this point with all of the landscaping. It's taken us a couple of years to complete all the landscaping, but as you all know, that trees aren't cheap. So it does take a little bit to save.
So if we were to assume right now, and it is an assumption, that this was a observation by the inspector that started this ball rolling, have you received any complaints from any of the neighbors? Are there anybody that's going to stand up and say you need to move that? Are you aware of that? Has anybody else come to you and said that that's not okay?
No one has.
Okay. Ms. Harlow, I'd like to see if we could get, if there's anyone else for or against this.
Yes. So if the board is done with the Carnes at the moment? Yes? Okay.
Yes, I am.
All right. Kevin and Julie, I'm going to go on and mute you. If you are an attendee and would like to speak for this appeal, please, I'm going to lower all the hands here. Please raise your hand and I will click on you in the order that I see you pop up. Okay, I see. Rick.
Yeah, Rick.
Hi, Rick. You'll need to unmute yourself. This is Jennifer Harlow. You are going to speak on behalf of this appeal, and have you sworn yourself in?
Yes, I have.
Thank you. Please go ahead.
Okay, well, my name is Rick Wisher. I live at 11975 Timberlake. My house is just across the street and one house south of the property being discussed tonight. My primary concern is that a variance approval for a permanent structure in the front yard would set a precedent for the rest of the neighborhood. It's my understanding, and this was discussed somewhat tonight, that a permanent structure cannot be in the front yard, and it also must be 15 feet from the easement, which is why it's on the agenda tonight. If they're granted a variance that allows them,
We were supposed to be talking for a variance, not against it.
Yes,
oh, I'm sorry.
that's okay.
We'll get back to you.
Is there anybody else other than the Carnes who is here to speak for this motion, for this appeal? Please, you can raise your hand in the box. Okay, I do not see hands being raised to speak for the appeal. So, okay, we'll move on. We are going to speak, for anyone who wishes to speak against this appeal, please go on and raise your hand. Rick, if you have more to add, I believe you're still here with us.
I would like to hear a little bit more, please.
Okay.
Okay, so as I was saying, my primary concern is the precedent that it sets for the rest of the neighborhood. If they're allowed to put a permanent structure in their front yard, I'm concerned that the precedent set potentially changes the dynamics of the neighborhood and what other people in the neighborhood might do with their front yard. I've heard the Carnes talk tonight about privacy for them and both the neighbors and how that's a concern to them, but it's really been anything but private. Since the structure in the hot tub went into the front yard, there's been multiple occasions of parties at night. At times it's been loud enough to make my wife and I up, and that's because, again, that they have a hot tub and this permanent structure in their front yard. It's my opinion that nighttime entertainment with a hot tub and permanent structure should be confined to backyards.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me talk. I appreciate it.
Certainly. Does anyone have questions for Rick Wisher at the board? No? All right. I'm going to move through. I will move to Norman Fallick. Again, if you wish to speak against this motion, just raise your hand. All right, Norman.
Thank you. I live on basically across the street in one house in the other direction from Rick. In other words, about 2 houses north of where he lives. I've been in this neighborhood 29 and a half years. And I can tell you, there are no houses that are built in this neighborhood that are cocked at a funny angle. And there are certainly no houses that are built backwards. This whole thing is predicated on the fact that building a house facing the wrong way, and I doubt if any of you live across the street where you're looking at your neighbor's the back of their house as opposed to the front of their house. So this whole thing is predicated on a bad decision. And it's going to, and the fireplace where it is, it's making that bad decision our problem. Like Rick said, it's going to set a precedent. Not my problem that they consider their backyard the front yard, and they don't want a fireplace in their front yard. I wouldn't want a fireplace in my front yard either. But the problem is, as far as the rest of the neighborhood is concerned, that's where their backyard is because they chose to build their house backwards. So this is about, like you said, it's about setting a precedent, and it's all based on the original bad decision from building the house in the wrong direction. One other point, I almost burst out laughing out loud when I heard the word hardship. This is like, what, a $2,000 deal maybe? And we're talking about, what, a $600,000 house? I don't think it's a hardship. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Fallick. Does anyone from the board have questions for Mr. Fallick? Okay, see some head shaking. I am going to go to the next person on the list, Michael Pressler. I hope I'm saying your name correct.
Yeah, this is Mike Pricer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, no, appreciate it. And I think I'm at 12054 Palmettos Drive, just the next street down. I had very similar concerns with Rick and Norm. I think it's more about the precedent this sets for the neighborhood, building a structure in the front yard, as well as then I find it hard to believe. I think one of the board members asked a question, how did they not know about the requirements when they did build the house at a backward approach, if you will, and just knowing that that's really the front of their house and what it would take to actually put a permanent structure in like that. I do have a concern just for the neighbors in general, and though the the elevation is different, just even in this case, smoke from the fireplace getting in to the windows and the skylights of the neighbor's house, I think needs to take into account. I don't understand the hardship of removing the landscape. I think they've done a nice job with the landscape, but at the same time, there's no reason to remove it other than the fireplace and the notion that it is encroaching and so close to the neighbor's property line. Again, mainly concerned with the overall precedent for the neighborhood and that anybody could then go build a fire pit and structure chimney in their front yard detached.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pressler. Board, does anyone have any questions? Mr. Pressler? No? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Pressler.
You're welcome.
I'm gonna move through the list. Next, I have Carol Meldon. If you'd like to unmute yourself.
Am I unmuted? I think I might be.
You're unmuted now. We can hear you well.
Great. Good evening. My name is Carol Meldon. I have lived in Palmettos for almost 40 years. I'm actually in my second home in the subdivision. I lived on Heather Tree Court, the first street in the subdivision, for 8 years. And I have been at 11983 Timberlake Drive, directly across the street from the Carnes' home, for almost 30 years. So as you can tell, I'm a Palmetto advocate, and I'm invested in this neighborhood and hope to remain so for many years to come. The Carnes' house, Timberlake Drive is kind of unique here in Palmettos. We were a Homerama neighborhood many, many years ago. My home is Homerama, and every single one of the homes that are adjacent to the Carnes property is Homerama. We are unique, but I would say unique in home structure only. No one else adjacent to the Carnes' property or on Timberlake Drive as a whole has their house situated the way that the Carnes chose to build their home. Every one of our houses has a front door that faces Timberlake Drive. I have never even seen the Carnes' front door because their front door does not face Timberlake Drive. That's just a little side item. However, now the rest of us, as their structures have gone up, they have made numerous additions since they built the house. First of all, being the fireplace. And I do believe that I probably was one of the ones I did call when the fireplace was put in. And I don't know for a fact, but I did call Emily when all of the new decking and the pool were being put in. It is not a hot tub that has been added to this home. It is basically a pool, which Norm Fallick has already let you know has caused numerous incidents of people being awake at 2 o'clock in the morning with the teenagers and so on and so forth that have kept us up at night. The Carnes' chose to site their home the way that they did. For what reason, I don't know. It is totally not the norm in our neighborhood. One of the things that caught my attention when they were making their presentation was, yes, Mike Heath, whose home is, I live directly across the street from the Carnes's house, really directly across the street from Mike. But I'm right now sitting in my study and I can see the entire back of the Carnes's home. When this fireplace was being built, Mike did have a conversation with Mr. Carnes and told him that he didn't like it, that it was probably against code, but the Carneses chose to go ahead and build this anyway. This was prior to the whole thing being constructed. They did not take the opportunity to call Symmes Township and ask for any kind of recommendations. They wanted the fireplace, they wanted it where they wanted it, and they put it there. So, and since then, they've added additional decks and a swimming pool, a built-in swimming pool. And the rest of us now, every time we go into our yards, or anyone that drives down our street sees all of this. I don't care, you know, evergreens, whatever. You can see it as clear as day. The Carneses cannot, I have a pool in my backyard, a fire pit in my backyard, but the Carneses can't see it because all of those structures in my yard are in my backyard, not in my front yard. So in order to comply with the zoning regulation, the fireplace needs to be removed. It needs to go to the rear yard, especially considering if you people could come over here and see how close it is to Mr. Heath's property, you would be shocked. The structure needs to be moved to the backyard for not only the neighbors here that are affected and continue to be affected by every additional structure that is put in over there, but also I think you're opening up a can of worms if you let this continue, not only here in Palmettos, but every place else. The rules are made for everybody, and to let a few break the rules, I don't think it's a wise thing to do. Thanks very much.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Meldon. Board, do you have any questions for Ms. Meldon? No? Okay. I'm going to move on. I have Janine Tismo next in line to talk. Please unmute yourself.
Hi, can you guys hear me?
Wonderfully.
Yep.
Okay. Hi, this is Janine Tismo. I'm actually Rick Wisher's wife, but I also wanted to speak as well. Carol Meldon is my next door neighbor. Mike Heath lives across the street from me, as well as the Carnes. One thing I just want to reiterate is this sets a precedent. If you would ask yourselves, every one of you that are on the board, would you want to buy a house in a homeorama setting that when you walk out your front door, you see someone's backyard? The other thing that I want to mention as well too is something that my husband touched upon, because this fireplace is technically in the front yard. It's very enticing to basically, to have gatherings. Late at night, at 11:30 at night, when it's supposed to be quarantine, there's a lot of CHCA students swimming in that hot tub, AKA pool, because this is a very large hot tub, that it's very disturbing to the neighbors. We've lived across the street for 10 years, and it's very disheartening. We didn't buy this property to have this zoning issue. So I ask each of the board members, when you buy a house, a Class A property in a homeorama, previous site, is this something that you expect to have someone have a structure in their front yard that clearly violates zoning? And so my ask is that you please consider that what you guys are trying to establish here is precedence. I don't think we want to have this precedence in our neighborhood, let alone our township. The other thing I also wanted to share in terms of communication, I know there's been talks about the landscaping. The communication isn't there between the Carnes family and the neighbors. I actually stopped a group of workmen. I have video and I also have pictures that I can share with the board. There was a landscaping company that was on Mike Heath's property. He was not even in town. I had to call Mike and said, are you aware there is a large truck parked in your driveway, partially in your grass with a very large trailer, and there's a gentleman with a four-wheeler all over your property cutting down trees. He was not even aware. So the Carnes hired this company to come in to clear some brush, do some landscaping, but yet didn't have the courtesy to call Mike. I was the one that placed the call to Mike saying, hey, were you aware of this? And provided video and pictures. So thank you. Please take that into consideration as well.
Okay, I got a question.
Yes.
Okay, so as I've listened here, I've jotted down 5 key points that I hear coming up over and over again about the whole situation. What we're looking at is just the fireplace.
Yes, and it's clearly in violation of the zoning code as the way it's written by law.
Okay.
It's black and white.
But getting rid of the fireplace isn't going to solve all these other issues that you've focused on.
No, it's not, but that's a step in the right direction. By
almost-
not removing the fireplace, you've basically established a precedent that my other neighbors on this street and also your neighbors in your community can place a fireplace that is X amount of feet away from their next door neighbor that violates pure zoning code that's in black and white. Law is black and white, and it clearly violates that.
All I want to do is clarify that we're only dealing with the fireplace as a violation. That isn't going to solve all of these other issues. Okay, we'll take it upon ourselves to deal with the fireplace, but I just want to make sure that people understand that isn't going to solve all these other things that are being brought up. Okay, is that clear?
Agree, but this is a step in the right direction because it's in clear violation of code.
Okay, but it's the only step. It's the only step we're dealing with.
Right.
Okay.
But it's a step in the right direction because we don't want to set a precedent.
Okay. Does anyone else from the board have anything for Ms. Tismo? No. I'm seeing head nods. Janine, did you have anything else?
No, just thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So I'm going to bring up the next person on the line is Mike Keith. You can unmute yourself, affirm that you've been sworn in.
I'm here. I did.
And you are
Can you hear me?
speaking, can you hear us?
I can hear you fine.
Okay. And you are speaking against this appeal.
I am speaking against this fireplace and this variance that they've petitioned for. And I have some clarification on what the board was initially discussing when you guys were talking about setbacks, where the fireplace is located, the distance of my house to the side yard, the front yard, where this, just where it all sits. So I encourage you to ask me some questions. I just want to give you just a little backdrop or background information on myself. I've been a resident in this house for 27 years. I did buy into this neighborhood based on this particular lot, and it is completely wooded. If you guys have looked at an aerial view from Google, it'll probably bring up an older image, and you can see how nestled in this house was. When the Carnes, bought this land, and I learned that was going to happen, I, kind of just bit my lip, and there it was. But that's change, and I was going to be rolling with it. I didn't know how it was going to affect me, but it has affected me. I've been in a position where I've been beat down in a different manner because I've been a caregiver for the last 8 years. I have been absent from my house a lot as the time went on, starting 8 years ago. In 2019, I was gone 9 of 12 months. In this year, 2020, I was gone for the first 4.5 months. So as far as raising objections and trying to live with this fireplace, it wasn't really in me to do it. I've expressed it to the Carnes. They knew my situation, and they know I've been gone. Every time I've come back, there's been a transformation in the yard next door. It's not my place to tell them what to do with it. I'm going to speak just like Jack Horvath has said. I'll stick to the fireplace. Besides them transforming the landscape inadvertently or by decision of their own, cutting down old growth tree of mine, 2 went down in the debacle. Julie was upset about it. I heard from her son, nice kid, get along fine with him. I tried to come back, after Janine called me, there was like spilt milk when you're dealing with somebody in a life and death situation. So when I come home, I find, you know, the whole thing's changed. And that was 2019. 2018, the end of it is when they started putting up this fireplace. So I'll hone in on that. I looked out my window and I saw a skid of cinder blocks. I wandered over. I like construction. I wandered over and I said, "What are you doing?" And he goes, "Well, I think I'm going to build a fireplace or a fire pit." I said, "Interesting." I wasn't too concerned. It was what it was. And that was that. Later, I saw that he poured a foundation for it. I saw him and his kid do a technique I've never seen. It was, I think, the first he ever did it with a tarp. And he poured a foundation off of a corner closest to my house, off of their cement deck or cement patio that is not in the original drawings and permitted for the house when it was constructed. It was an ad hoc add-on they did when they built the home. The original patio design, and you can look it up on the maps on KGIS or whatever you guys have in your system. But their patio extended just straight out in with a parallel line from their house. When they built this extra 10 feet towards my land. They kept it right inside the setback requirements for something on the ground, which is 5 feet. The codes that they violated is an accessory structure in the front yard. It is technically in the front yard, this structure. It's not in the side yard. The side yard setback is 15 feet here. So Emily wrote up, and I didn't call this all in. I didn't have it in me to do this. Emily saw it when she came out to inspect a deck because of the fact that the Carnes company to deliver this swim spa tried to bring a crane in and shut down the roads. When Hamilton County got that call, they said, "Where is this going? What's it for?" And it was for, they're bringing a crane in to drop in a swimming pool or a swim spa. It's 20 to 30 feet under the square foot regs of a swimming pool. It's larger than some small pools, but it's underneath the regs. It doesn't need a permit. There it is. But when they tried to shut down the roads, that's when Emily came out and saw everything. And all this construction was done without any permits at that time. There was nothing turned in for it. So the Carnes readjusted. They had to put a halt to it. They made them dig up posts. And at least that's what it says in the reports. This is all in black and white, all within your paperwork within Hamilton County. They did this. They got caught up. They moved forward with the building of their deck, got their hut out done. This was happening in the fall of just 2019. At that time, Emily saw this fireplace and realized that this is not a legal structure. She talked to me about it. I talked to her frankly. I said, "This is here." I told her my situation. I don't want to fight, but it is not something I want. And she goes, "Mike, there's nothing I can do. I have to write this up." I'm like, "Okay, fine, you do it." I go, "What about the trampoline that's been sitting here?" She goes, "That's up to you." And I said, "As far as I'm concerned, leave it. You know, one day they'll take it down, but that's not something I want to do. I don't want to rock the boat. That's just not been my mantra." So back to the construction of the fireplace, I told him when he started, when he got the cinder blocks up, I walked over there immediately and I said to him, "You know, Kevin, you can't put this here." And he's like, "Why is that?" I go, "You can't put a permanent structure in your front yard." And he goes, "It's not permanent. I'm just stacking blocks." And I just pointed to his house and I said, "Those are just stacked bricks." And then he just looked at me and I said, "Plus, he poured a foundation for it. You tell me that's not permanent?" And I just walked away and discussed. I mean, he's going to do what he's going to do. So then I come back from another trip and now he's got it all faced in stones. And now it's grown from 5 feet to 7 feet and he still hasn't capped it. And so I'm gone for all 19. So yes, did I raise the initial complaint? No. But do I want it here? No. Is it in violation? Yes. It doesn't meet a setback of 15 feet in the front or side. It's an auxiliary structure. It is putting smoke into my house. In the evenings, I like to open up my windows. The westerly winds blow that smoke right at my house. If it was in the backyard, it would blow it into the woods. But in the front, that's just happenstance. But it happens to be the fact. That's an objective, observation. There is no rhyme or reason for when they're going to build a fire. Just last week they had one. That I'm all for it. Do whichever you want. But it's too close to the house. I have a wood-sided house. I'm below their fireplace. Embers, anything can come and hit it. There's dry stuff. We get dry seasons. It's a fire hazard. It's a safety hazard. It's an odor hazard. It's an eyesore for when people walk up to my house. It's only a $2,500 item. It is not an inconvenience for them to move it. It wouldn't change their lives. They could still keep all of the privacy by keeping the evergreens there. I, in turn, tried to match them with whatever they were doing. Julie and I tried to work together, and I thought we did a decent job in the end. I had to cancel a flight to return to Florida to stay and make sure we made it right because I was worried what they were going to do next. If you grant this variance, it just sets a, again, I'll use the word precedent. If you grant it, I don't know if they're going to build something else 10 feet away from the side yard. I just don't know because they're actively moving forward. Now, which the Carnes don't know, but many of the neighbors did, my mom just passed away after being in hospice for a year in July. I am here to stay. I'm not going anywhere. And I don't want to live with this. And it's up to the board to ensure that when somebody buys into a Class A residential, that other ideas that people can't just impose their will upon you. I'm counting on you guys to do that. So if you have any questions for me, I know I just spit a lot at you, but that basically caught everybody up. Some of the neighbors know this. Most people in the audience don't, including you guys. Again, Emily's got all this documented. All these plats are documented. The citing, even in the complaints, if you guys read the violations, it's not, when they talk about 5 feet, that's if the structure was in the backyard, but it's a structure in the front. Anything in the front or side has to be 15. If it was beyond their furthest point on that corner on my side, then it could be moved as close as 5 feet. But their house is huge, and it's cockeyed because they had to fit it that way in order to get the offsets to the side yard. It barely fits. It dwarfs the neighbor on the other side and my house together. So that's why it's positioned that way. If she wanted a lower level walkout, I don't know what to tell you. It's just like buying a corner lot. You're kind of stuck with what you got. There are 180 plus homes in this neighborhood. There are a lot of them that are on hillsides that are above street grade. None of them are facing backwards, and none of them are enjoying these kind of conversations, which I hate. And I say that because I don't want to be adversarial with my neighbors. I have to live here. They're good people, but I just don't want this to go on. And I hope they hear this, that I don't mean them any harm or ill will. I just don't want this here. And that's it. It's a $2,500 item. Move it. He built it. He can take it down. Simple as that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mike. We're all sending you our sympathies for your mother. I'm sorry to hear that. Does anyone from the board have any questions for Mike regarding the fireplace?
Very helpful.
No. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Mike, I think you answered a lot of my questions as well. So.
Well, I'm happy to do so.
They were already answered for me. So nobody else has questions. I am going to mute you here, Mike, and I'm going to move. I have one last hand raised, and it is Brian. Here we go. Brian, if you could unmute yourself. Brian, are you there?
Yep,
We go.
can you hear me? Sorry
Yes.
about that. Yeah, I am a neighbor as well on Timberlake 12086. My concern with this situation is, again, just the idea of precedent. We all, I think, want to expand our properties and do new and wonderful things. But if you have people that are, ignoring the rules and regulations and citing this as an example, I don't think it's going to be a benefit to our neighborhood in the long run. So, that's my 2 cents.
All right. Thank you, Brian. Does anyone from the board have anything for Brian? No. Okay. All right. I am going to move on. I believe this is our final person, Madden Chidembaram. I'm sorry if I totally messed that up.
Yeah, you're pretty close.
Okay.
It's Madan. I live on 11991 Timberlake, directly across from the Carnes. Most of them have already covered all of the issues, so there's not a whole lot I'm going to add to it. My concern, again, is just the precedents. Right, and more precedent. I mean, it's the same story everywhere. You don't want to have precedents, then everybody else would start, breaking the using this as an excuse to start building structures close to each other's property lines.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay. All right. Thank you. Oh, okay. So now I have Mike Heath and Kevin Carnes raising hands. I know you both have already spoken for and against. Generally, what we do at this time is move into deliberations, which is just among the board. I'm gonna let Mike say something quickly, and also Kevin and Julie say something quickly. If we were face to face, that's generally what we would do. I'm gonna put Mike on here first.
I'm here.
Okay, hi Mike. I just saw that you raised your hand again.
I did. I just wanted to ask you guys, the board, are you guys clear on the side yard setback and the front setback for structures? So that no additional structures, the law is written that no additional structures can be in the front or side, period. It has to be part of the permanent structure, and that is 15 feet from the side. They are not just talking about 4 feet, and 4.5 feet versus 5. We're talking about 4.5 versus 15, if it was even allowed. So I just want to make sure that you guys are all on the same page, that we're not just talking about a 6-inch offset. We're talking about 10 feet plus, if it was even part of the house. You guys are all nodding?
I believe we all understand that. Mr. Huff has already testified to that.
Oh, well, no, because I heard it in the beginning. There was a lot of confusion on, this 5 feet and 4.5 and that, but that's only if it's in the rear of the yard. In the front and in the side, we're talking 15 feet, and they're under 5 by their own surveyors from the application, from what I've seen. So I just want to thank you for that recognition. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Anyone have anything for Mike there? Okay, I am going to mute Mike, Kevin, and Julie. You guys are back on here. Oh,
okay. We've been painted.
You're muted.
Something.
I'm sorry. I believe that was me.
Can you hear me now? I'm unmuted, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry about that. That was human error here.
We're new to this.
We have been painted in a rather poor light by our neighbors, and I am upset by that. I didn't realize that we were viewed in that manner, and I apologize. The parties they referred to, I am a very strict mom. Just ask our daughter, and we shut them down at 11:30 and that's on the weekends, and they don't happen in the weeknights past 10. As far as sound going, I have heard just regular conversations that are being had by people that are in their backyards in some instances, and it must be because of the way the pond is and the air travels. So as far as, if it were in our backyard or front yard, the other side of our house, the sound would probably still be carrying. But in regards to the neighbor that stated that we just were all over Michael's yard with a landscaper and a truck and stuff, we were cutting down a tree that had died that would have fallen on either our house or Michael's house to avoid that from happening. In the process, the tree guys that we thought they were reputable and they appear to be online, it ended up being an absolute disaster. And they were on Michael's property to clear logs off of the area, and they cleaned up the area and everything. And it was just a trailer and a pickup truck. I don't know what the 4-wheeler is they were talking about. I was there the whole time they were clearing the trees. And it was an absolute disaster. And that's what we lost 5 trees instead of the 1 dead one. It just happened. I mean, we were doing that trying to be good neighbors. We've always tried to be good neighbors. We put in the landscaping in order to beautify the neighborhood. So I apologize to the neighbors that are still on here who have clearly upset about what we do and what we've been, and have never said anything about the parties. You know, if it's ever in that case again, we all have phone numbers. Just give us a call. Back to the fireplace, though. I'm done.
Yes. Okay. Do you guys have anything that you want to add specifically about the fireplace?
Us?
Yes.
We've said
Yeah,
pretty much all of it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think the one piece I would like to say is, you know, now the objections today are objections we have never heard before. Michael was there for the entire construction. He actually spent multiple days on our property observing the construction. And never at any point did anybody ever come over and say, you can't do that. That's illegal. And so they're all talking about precedent, but the reality is they were all living in those houses at the exact same time it was built. So for everybody to speak up now is convenient, but at the end of the day, they were all already there. And so I guess I'm just questioning as to, you know, why, baffled as to why all of this emotion has now come out of this, when really it's been there for 2 years. And in 2 years, it had somebody come over and said, you know, hey, that's against the zoning laws, and, you know, explained it to us. Great, let's have that conversation. Let's figure out a remediation and move from there. But, you know, honestly, this is all just kind of a campaign to make sure that we're painted as terrible people. And all we've done is improve the value of the homes in our neighborhood by building what we did, and by landscaping that we did. Our neighbor's house, Michael, continues to go down in value every year, but ours goes up in value every year. So it means we pay more taxes, and we're happy to do that. We think it's an important part of being a citizen. But at the end of the day, our upkeep on our house and our investments in making the structure and the property beautiful is something that, you know, we have chosen to invest in, because it is important for us to make sure that that continues a path of, you know, making sure that there's landscaping done and trees are kept nice and lawns are treated. So I'm baffled again by the amount of hatred for us. So that's it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Carnes. At this time,
Jennifer, I have a couple of questions from Mr. Carnes. Mr. Carnes, this is Byron Fowler. I've got 3 questions for you. One is, did you need a permit for building the fireplace?
At the time, I didn't know I needed a permit.
We know now.
Okay, did you have a professional contractor build the fireplace or no?
Unfortunately, my dad was a shop teacher, so I learned a lot of things the hard way, which was do it yourself. So no, I can do my own electric and plumbing and build a fireplace. So
okay, so you built a fireplace, and do I understand correctly that the patio portion of it was built a year or more earlier than the fireplace, and that you said it took a couple of days to build the fireplace?
Yeah, I think it was a total of 2.5, 3 weeks to build the fireplace. The patio was already poured at the time of the construction. So, you know, that was on the original construction documents.
Okay, thank you.
any further questions?
Yeah, you just raised a question for me. Okay, when I look at one of the photographs that was submitted, and I'm looking at the one that has the patio furniture to the left, the fireplace to the right, and I'm looking at the deck flooring, the patio flooring. So, Mr. Carnes, are you saying that both sections that lead right up to the wall that is on the left side of the fireplace, that was already existing?
Yes. The builder put that in, and it was just kind of a rectangle of concrete off the back of our house. And so we were trying to make it look nicer and with the fireplace and such. But yeah, those slabs were already there. The builder put those in.
Okay, thank you.
I have another question in a way. Raised the retaining wall. Was that built during the construction, or did you put that in place with when you built the fire pit or the fireplace?
The wing walls for the fireplace?
What retaining?
Yes. Those aren't actually retaining walls. They're just decorative stone. They're less than 3 feet. So they're not retaining anything.
Okay. What picture are you looking at?
The same one.
The one it's the one that's looking at the neighbor's house from up above in the fireplace.
Oh, the retaining wall with.
Yeah, those aren't the one that's looking, the same one that Jack was talking about that has the slab with the furniture on it and the fireplace?
Yes. Yeah.
Those aren't retaining walls. They're just decorative structure. They're 3 feet, like it's a seat.
Okay. Thank you.
Now the fireplace does sit partially over top of the existing concrete slab. So
on an angle.
Yeah, there was the design was to incorporate the existing concrete slab and then build up around that. So that's how we did it at the angle.
Good.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions, further questions for the Carnes? No? All right, video silence. Thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Carnes. At this time, I'm gonna turn you off here. There we go. At this time, we are going to go into deliberation. This is among the board. And if you raise your hand, we will not be taking any further testimony. Board, Darcy, you've been very quiet. I'm going to start with you.
Man, it's a tough one. I don't know. I'm still a little confused about the timing and whether this should have been noted earlier. I just, the timing has confused me on this because there's construction, there's work being going, underway. It's being inspected, and if this was a problem, why did it wait till to this time frame? That's my question, and I think that maybe it should have been picked up much earlier, and when the construction was going on. I'm just puzzled about that. That's about all I have.
Okay. Byron, would you like to speak next?
Well, I'm reading the notice of refusal again, and the weakness in the Carnes case is that it says no accessory use or structure shall be located in the front or side yard. But that applies, I assume, I don't know if the patio counts as an accessory structure and the hot tub counts as an accessory structure, but I would think so.
Yeah.
In which case, that was already accepted. In terms of the original permitting and the construction and the drawings of the house. So I find it a little bit hard to say that because of the confusing situation, the confusion here is that the structural design back of a house is facing the public street, except not as you normally would, but at a 45 kind of degree angle. But that still doesn't make it a backyard. The confusion here is whether or not this is the front or side yard, in which case you can't have the structure. It's not even a question of of the setback requirement, whether it's 5 feet or 15 feet. And as you can see in the notice of refusal, the answer is it's 5 feet under the code section cited. So a 6-inch difference is not a real difference to us. And I think especially in an environment like this to be the deciding factor. I think the deciding factor for this board are two things. One just raised by Darcy, and that is the time frame involved in terms of the original inspections and the original work and the time frame that's brought to us now, and whether or not this is a front yard or side yard as opposed to a backyard. I'm like Darcy, I find it a very difficult choice to make. And all of the comments we've heard really do focus on the precedent issue. And if I were speaking to the public about this, I'd be simply saying the job of this board is to take each case on its own merits. And we weigh in whether there have been other variances given in the vicinity, but that fact alone is not determinative and doesn't impair our judgment abilities. And so I'm not at all concerned about the precedent that this makes. I'm just struggling with the fact that they were permitted to treat the front of their property as a backyard. That seems to be what the government did in granting their original building permits. And this is an add-on to that. That isn't such a big deal, except at the very minimum, it's a violation of a side setback that I find minuscule.
Byron, I don't know about that. And the reason why I say that is because the decking and all of that were attached to the house, which if I remember from John, that's okay. The issue here is a detached structure. And detached structures by definition are supposed to be in the backyard. Now, if you say, well, we define it as the front yard, as the backyard, I agree, this is very confusing. But if you look at the 189 homes, okay, and the precedent set by what is normally accepted as the front yard, this is a detached structure in the front yard. And as such, it's not permitted. Okay, the fact that you got a patio, it's attached to the house, and John, you're an expert, you can tell us. But I think that's what's different for me, is that this is a detached structure for which there is a very clear zoning language about what is and what is not permissible.
No question, and that's a valid viewpoint.
If I take a look at our factors, okay, and let me just run through them and you guys can kind of tick them off in your head as you see them. The first one is, can the property in question yield a reasonable return or be used in any beneficial way without the variance? And I say, yes, of course. I mean, we're talking about a fireplace. It doesn't alter the patio, the structure, the hot tub, all that. We're not dealing with any of that. We're only dealing with the fireplace. So number one is a yes. Is the variance a substantial deviation from the zoning code? Okay, there we get into this definition, front yard, backyard. But as I said before, the common practice and acceptable practice in the neighborhood is what faces the street is the front yard. And so from that definition, this would be a substantial deviation from the zoning code. Will the essential character of the neighborhood be substantially altered or made, or would adjoining property suffer substantial detriment as a result of the variance? Meaning, if we left the fireplace there, I think that's a judgment call, but I did hear a recurring theme about precedent, and I would give number 3 a maybe, okay? Just because I'm not Solomon. The fourth one, will the variance adversely affect the delivery of government services such as garbage? And the answer to that is no. Did the property owner purchase the property with knowledge of the zoning restrictions? I'm going to give the Carnes the benefit of the doubt and say no. I don't think anybody, when they're building a home with everything else going on, you trust your builder and your contractor to kind of take care of that for you. Can the property owner's predicament be feasibly obviated through some method other than a variance? In other words, does the property owner have a remedy other than a variance which could alleviate the problem? And the answer is yes, of course, to relocate the fireplace. Relocate the fireplace, get a permit to put it in the back away from the property line. You can do that. It may not be their choice, but they can do it. It's a possibility. And the last one is will the spirit and intent behind the zoning requirement be observed and substantial justice done by granting the variance? I don't like the way that thing's worded. I'm not even sure I understand what it's asking, to be honest with you. I don't know. So as I listen to this, I come back and I say, you know, we're only dealing with the fireplace. And where I'm at is I would not grant the variance at this time, just based on the zoning language and what is normally perceived as acceptable in the neighborhood. That'd be my position. Welcome to hear other opinions.
Okay, I guess I'm the last one. No, really, Jennifer will be. You know, I'm here. I've heard everybody's comments, and in reality, the front yard is always the part of the building that faces a street. When a house is on a corner, you have two front yards, and you have to work around that as well. This house faces Timberlake. No matter which way they face the house, the front of the house is the area where they actually built the deck and where they built the fireplace. Did the owners, I'm assuming the owners had gotten a permit to build their deck in the pool. And when they did that and it's attached to the house, it becomes part of the house. So it's no longer a separate structure, and even though it's a deck, it is still part of the base structure of the building. But building the fire pit or the fireplace that is actually sitting in the front yard, whether it's on the side of the front yard or wherever it is, but it's an accessory structure, and an accessory structure is noted has to be in the backyard according to our zoning code. So therefore, the fireplace is not a legal structure. And I feel because they've been doing, the owners have been doing building, adding on to this, to their house, and they have gotten a permit, they should have understood that they need permits for any structure they build on their house, and they should have received a permit to build the fireplace as well. And apparently they didn't, because he said he learned from his father who taught him how to do things, and he thought he could just build it. Well, it's an accessory structure and it sits in the front yard. And in my mind, it needs to be eliminated because it is a detriment from the standpoint of the neighbors. The winds in this area are westerly, and it's blowing into the neighbors. So it is a detriment to the neighbors. I just think it needs to be relocated. Now, saying that, I brought up earlier, I asked that question, if the fireplace was attached to the deck, it would be part of the building itself. and part of the deck, which is attached to the building. So it's one big structure. So they could actually move it against the deck, touching the deck in a place that that they could build it on and still have that fireplace there, but it will not be a freestanding fireplace. It would be part of the house, and then they would have to deal with the deck have to be fireproofed. So there's a whole litany of things that they would have to do. But at this point, I don't think the fireplace is legal, and it's going to need to be removed.
I'll go last. I don't think I'm bringing up a lot of new points. I'm kind of in between where Jack and Ralph are. I weight the factors a little differently. One of my concerns is simply we have zoning laws, because if these houses were 10 feet apart and somebody built a fire pit or anything right there on that side, the safety issue becomes a much more immediately apparent issue. So that's really the only other part of my decision-making factor that I would add in, according to the factors for practical difficulties. Do we want to have more conversation? Yes, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, the zoning laws deal with how close things need to be to the property. The building code actually states that if there's a building, a structure, if it's less than 15 feet away from a property line, it has to meet fire regulations, and the structure of it has to be fireproof. So the closer you get, there are different rules from 0 feet to 5 feet, 6 feet to 15 feet, and so on. So there are different fire ratings. A fireplace would be fireproof in its own way because of what it's constructed out of. So to answer your question, I mean, it is technically fireproofed, but we do have zoning codes for a reason. And I think placing it within a certain distance and in the front yard, you can't even have it in the zoning code. It's that simple in my mind. And that's all we're really looking at is the fireplace and the zoning code, how it relates.
Yes. Thank you. And
Ralph.
I
Okay. Yeah. Can I say something, please?
Yeah.
Sure.
Ralph, you had mentioned about it, if it was near the deck or whatever, it would be part of the house. It really is on the patio. Is the patio considered part of the house? Because we do get into issues about patios and as such.
Well, the patio that I think you're looking at is the concrete patio.
The concrete, yes,
That's not part of the house. That's like a sidewalk because it's flat on the ground. The deck itself, because it's raised and it's a structure, if it's touching that, if it's built to the house, it's part of the structure itself.
Okay.
So if they had that fireplace next to the that was built in basically to the deck, it becomes part of that wood structure of the deck, which then becomes part of the house because it's all part and parcel. It's like putting a fireplace in your house. The only difference is they would have to do other things because if it's a wooden deck and a fireplace, you have other things to deal with.
Understood.
Any more deliberation, conversation?
Well,
School me on building codes?
I'll just say one more thing. That is, I'll concede 100% it's a violation. And that we have a zoning code for a reason. And we often take into consideration in these things the opinions of the immediate neighbors. But I think this is making a big deal out of nothing. I don't think you can fault the owners of this property for configuring their house with what you think of as a normal design front on the back and the back on the front. I don't think you hold that against them, but when they had permissively a patio, a hot tub, and now they're just adding on a fireplace adjacent to all that, in my own judgment, I think it's no big deal, and I'd grant this variance. I mean, it's a balancing question, and I think I can understand anybody, standing firm and being against this, but I just don't think that you want to punish the history here by fighting over the fireplace itself.
No, I'm not fighting over anything else. It's the location of the fireplace, where it actually is. It's in the front yard of the house.
I understand. No question about it. It's a violation.
Yeah. And that's all that's really in front of us. Yeah. Is it a violation? And can it be, like we've given variances for fences being too close, for adding on to a house or something, an accessory structure in the backyard due to the land and the way it was developed, but it was always in the backyard and how it was situated. This is actually in a front yard, and that's regardless how the house gets situated or was situated. The deck is actually part of the house. It's just an addition to the house, and it's part of the setback. So it meets all the.
To be 15 feet, not 5 feet, if it's in the front yard. So, I mean, it's not like it's 14 feet and we're only arguing 1 foot. If in fact you're okay with an auxiliary structure in the front yard. There's two big things here. There's two big things. Okay.
Anybody like to make a motion if we're done discussing?
It's Ralph's job.
That's exactly.
It's my job. Okay. Let's see. How do we do it? That we do not grant the variance of what is it about building an accessory structure in the front yard located at 11988 Timberlake Drive, Cincinnati, Ohio. I think that will do it.
So Ralph, to affirm your motion is to decline the variance. Is that correct?
To decline the variance, correct.
Okay.
To not grant it.
I'll second it.
Okay.
Okay.
Luann, we can't hear you.
Why don't you?
Okay.
Why don't we just go down the list? I'll be first.
Okay.
I say what is it? I say yay to my motion, not granting it.
Jack?
I'm a yes.
Darcy?
I say no.
Byron?
No.
I'm going to say yes. The motion will carry and the variance is denied. Okay.
Good.
So, was somebody saying something? Okay. So at this time, we are going to move on to our next hearing, which is BZA number 2020-08. It is at 8988 Symmes Trace Court. construction of a swing set in the front yard. And I'm looking for the appellants, the Mets. Here we go. I'm going to click on, I have two Aaron Metz, so I'm going to let both of you talk and unmute yourself and present on behalf of your variance.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I had to join multiple because I wasn't sure which one the audio would work, so.
Wait. Should we hear from John, the staff report first?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I'm glad I tested that the audio's working.
Yes, okay.
Need to hear from John.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, and I'll be very brief because I know you guys understand the case. The request here is to allow a swing set that's already been erected. It's on a corner lot. The swing set's supposed to be in the rear, but it's technically in the front. So it's not the side, it's in the front. And I think in our staff report, we say that it's about 30 feet from the property line along Symmes Creek Drive and about 20 feet from the deck of the existing home. If you see the staff photos in the report, it's very visible as you enter this subdivision. And I believe it's very likely that someone complained about the swing set and Emily went out and cited them. It is a kind of unique situation in that if you look at the aerial photo, the backyard, actually it's a property that has 3 frontages, but the backyard is along Montgomery Road. It's very steep and wooded, and I believe that's why they did not place the swing set there. In our staff report, we did note there does appear to be a spot for the swing set in the side yard, even though that's not permitted, but it might not be as visible if you put it on the western portion of the side yard where there looks to be a little bit of space. But again, it's a swing set variance request for the front yard where it's supposed to be in the rear. I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I'll provide any graphics or site plans that you'd like to see.
Is that considered a structure?
No, your code specifically calls out swing sets. It's not considered an accessory structure like the last case. Swing sets are prohibited to be in the front or side, and they're called out specifically.
Right. Okay. So I just wanted to, that's what I thought, but I wanted to be clear because these are 2 different, it's not like a carryover from last case. Okay.
Correct. Yeah. And then in the citation, the section is 342.5 play devices in the rear yards. So it's not only swing sets, it's also jungle gyms and other play devices. And they're supposed to be 5 feet from the property line as well when they're located in the rear yard.
John, could you point out on the aerial exactly where the set exists and where I don't understand where the west side is, where you suggested be placed?
Okay, I'll share my screen. Hopefully you see the aerial photo.
Yes.
Okay, so this along Symmes Trace Court is considered a front yard. Along Symmes Creek Drive is considered a front yard. The swing set sits about where I have the hand cursor. And the point I was making about what appears to be some space where you could put the swing set would be over here, although it still would need a variance because it's not allowed in the side. That's the western side yard. My point was, if you look at this vegetation, and it would probably be screened a lot better than it is now. It sits right out here. As you enter the subdivision, it's very visible. But if it was placed here, it would still need a variance, but I think it would be screened from the majority of people coming in and out of the neighborhood. Plus there's some vegetation here where you might not even see it from Symmes Trace Court.
John, is there any place on that lot you can put it without needing a variance?
Yeah, in the rear yard. It might be able to be put in this area here where I got the cursor. But as you can see, or hopefully you can see, it gets to be very wooded. And I believe topography wise, it's pretty steep as well. But there are spots that can be placed. It doesn't seem easy, but it has to be kind of behind the corner of the house here in technically what's considered the rear yard.
Okay.
Any variances given for similar in the neighborhood?
No, I don't believe so. Let me just take a quick look at the report because we always cite if there's been anything similar. And nothing for swing sets in the front or side yard. The only thing we listed in the staff report is the privacy fence in 1989 that was permitted to be in the side yard for a home that's located to the southwest of this property, not adjacent, but I think a couple homes down. So nothing for swing sets or play devices in this area.
Okay, do we have any other questions for Mustafa?
I don't, thank you.
No?
I'm fine.
Okay. John, thanks for hanging around with us.
You're welcome.
This time we really are going to go to the Metzes.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So a few things. One, the spot that he mentioned where the swing set is currently, which looks like it was close to the driveway, that's where we originally placed it, but we've since moved it back once we received the notification. So it actually does sit back quite a bit farther from that point at this point, which is actually where we'd requested that we could be allowed to get the variance. In reference to the side lot on the west side, unfortunately, one, it's sloped, and two, there's no exit to the house over there. So it would never get used if we placed it over there, but it is also sloped to the creek on that side. Literally the only spot of our yard that is flat is that section that's between our house and Symmes Creek Drive. That's the only level area of land that we have. The entire, and technically the area between the house and Montgomery Road is actually considered front yard as well, because technically from the road all the way to the house is front yard. So we have 3 front yards, 0 rear yard, although they did designate a slight section between our house and Montgomery Road to be rear yard, but it's entirely wooded. Between the house and the woods, there's only about 10 feet of clearance, and there's actually a fence and some shrubs there. So we couldn't really place it behind the house. We tried to put it as close to the back of the house as we could. Where we had hoped to put it, there is actually some shrubbery that does block it, and we plan on putting up more vegetation to block it. We've only been here a couple months though, so we haven't had the chance to do it. So we would like, if you can, I don't know if he can show the screen again, and I can kind of explain where. But off of the corner of the back deck, there's a pine tree that kind of sits out by itself. And we would put the swing set between that pine tree and the back deck. And then we would add more vegetation between the pine tree and the other wooded area. So if you can see the aerial view, I think would help. Yeah, so if you see, there's a tiny little dot that looks like a lone tree sitting out by itself close to Symmes Creek Drive. So you see the big wooded area, it's all brown. So yeah, so right where that little pine tree is, right there by itself. From there, if you draw like a diagonal between that and the corner of the deck, we were planning on putting it right around, it's right around that spot right now. That's where it is. We had originally placed it next to our driveway, but we've since moved it. So the goal is to put it between that pine tree and that corner of that deck. And so that from the pine tree over to the other wooded area, the brown section, we would add more vegetation to block it. So when you're coming off of Montgomery Road, we're planning on putting up some river birch clumps. So they're very tall, very quick growing, and they're actually, you put them in the ground fairly large to begin with to give us a little more privacy. The reason we can't really place it any closer to the house is because a lot of those trees, we've actually already had to have 4 or 5 trees taken out because they were dead when we moved in, and they'd fallen actually into our property, basically where our swing set is right now. So we've had those trees removed. We just don't want to take out any more trees to possibly move the swing set where we would have to. Because if we take out any more trees, it really opens it up to Montgomery Road, and that's probably a worse, to me, that's a worse visual than having a very modest swing set in the property. We've got a bunch of neighbors that have spoken out in favor of it for us. They've written letters, the neighbors right across the street. So I don't know if anybody was able to join and stay on the 2 hours. I wish our case had been heard first after the last one. But yeah, so we're hoping to put it between basically where that small pine tree is and the corner of the deck. It would be no less than 30 feet away from Symmes Creek Drive. So putting it as close to the house as possible, we'd be at least 30 feet from Symmes Creek Drive, and we plan on putting more vegetation, not only to add because of the swing set, but also to kind of replace some of the trees that we had to have taken out of the wooded area.
Okay, Mrs. Metz, I need a question for clarity.
Sure.
Okay. Can you show me where the swing set was located at the time of the citation?
Yes, it's right where my hand is right now, right there. That's where it was at the time of the citation, right next to our driveway, because that's where we had put it together and just put it up.
You set it
That's
up.
where yeah. So when we bought this house a couple months ago, we had lived in another part of Loveland, and my daughter had a swing set, and Daddy had built her the swing set. When we moved in, that's the one thing she wanted was her new swing set. So Daddy rushed to get that set up, and we just propped it up where he built it, and had it there for a little while because we knew we were not part of a homeowners association. We didn't realize that there was. When I read the regulations, I didn't realize that I was defining the rear yard as okay as long as it's behind the back line of the house. I thought that was okay. I didn't realize that because of the road frontage, we technically have no rear yard. So that was my mistake for not understanding that.
All right. And now where is it physically sitting?
Right now, it's physically sitting, right about there, a little bit to the left, like probably closer to the pine tree. Like, right about there. We can either leave it there or we were planning to move it about 10 feet closer to the deck, but still on this side of the pine tree, like keeping it, it basically where you see that dark green, there's some very, very tall pine trees. That's what those are. It would kind of be almost sitting underneath that.
John, in a situation, please keep that up there, please. Keep the plot plan up. All right. Now, John, from a coding standpoint, given that she has a very unusual situation with 3 frontage, what would be a reasonable definition of where a backyard would start for somebody in this situation?
So they actually did define us. There is a section. So when I talked to the zoning commission person down at Hamilton County, they had actually circled a section that was considered rear yard, and it's basically all that brown area that you see marked by the A. That rear section, as long as it stayed to the left of the edge of the house, that was rear yard. Even though technically by definition it is not a rear yard because it's road frontage. So technically from the road frontage all the way to the house is considered front yard. By definition, we have no rear yard, but they did designate that section as rear yard. I think the previous owners had talked about possibly putting in an extra garage at some point, and so they had asked somebody to define what their rear yard would be, and that's what they had defined as rear yard, even though technically it's not.
Okay, so given that you know what the definition is for backyard, and you know that you need to put the swing set in the backyard, is your plan to put it into the backyard?
We can't because it's wooded and it's sloped. So all of that brown section that you see is wooded, sloped, and full of poison ivy. And there's actually a fence off the back of the deck right now, right off of there. So if you go straight off the back of the deck, there's a fence that goes out probably about 10 feet, and then it slopes, and then it goes down in front of the wooded area. A very tiny little wedge off the back of the house was fenced off, like a dog run almost. So and there's not enough space for a swing set to go between the house and the woods because the trees are literally right there. They're almost, the canopy of the trees is, some of the trees is touching our roof. That's how close the wooded area is to the back of the house.
So your request is for a variance along the back side of that area, maybe to the right of what would be considered the theoretical backyard line.
Yes.
But it's different than where it was when the citation was made previously.
Yes. Absolutely, yes. Mm-hmm.
All right. I'm just trying to understand. Okay. Keep going.
What else? So we will plan on putting more greenery in between that pine tree and the wooded area to try to block it off some. It's very small. It's natural wood, a swing, and one of those little, what are they called? Like the moon disc swings. Literally all it is. She's 4.5. We moved here. This is our forever house. We're never leaving, and all she wants is a swing set, and that was the only place we could put it. Unfortunately, that western lot, it's sloped, and plus there's no exit from the house. So like we would have, you'd have to walk around the other side of the house. It would never get used, but it's also sloped over there. We were trying to even think of a place to put in a shed, and I don't know that we're even going to have a place to put in a shed even legally in the rear yard because of the way it slopes, because it slopes to an active creek. So half of the property on the west side is creek bed and poison ivy, and it's all sloped from our house. It's the entire yard is sloped except for that section between our house and Symmes Creek. That's the only flat section. The front yard is sloped to Symmes Trace. The west side is sloped to the next house, and the backyard slopes to the active creek that runs from Montgomery Road out across the street the other way.
I think I might have a question that might benefit the board, if I may.
Yes, please.
So the photos, hopefully you can see the photos on the screen. The question I have the applicant, this is where the swing set is now, correct? These
Yes,
are the,
yes,
these are the pictures Emily gave me. So originally the swing set was up closer to the driveway.
Yes, it was basically right next to where you see my vehicle. It was right next to that.
And that's probably when the concern from a lot of people in the neighborhood, that's probably when they contacted Emily about the violation.
That was where it was when we received the letter. Yes, we moved it after we got the letter.
So
and
now
when we
there
moved
is
it,
some,
I thought that was rear yard. So
gotcha. But now there is some screening from this pine tree here and whatever tree this here is here. And there's probably some screening from the vegetation that's back in the back. Whereas
and we already planned on adding more vegetation between the pine tree and the wooded area because we lost a lot of trees right there. So it kind of opens it up a lot, and we wanted to add back some of that natural wooded look because obviously that's a benefit for our property and for the neighborhood. A lot of those trees were dead, and literally one fell on our pine tree within like a couple weeks, probably before we even had the swing set put up. So, but we've since had those removed. So there's a big gaping spot in the wooded area now that we plan on filling in addition to between the pine tree and the wooded area. Almost like bringing the wooded area across a little bit just to block that section off.
I do have a question.
Sure.
From John, is the where you pointed out earlier, is the swing set pretty much where you had suggested it be?
No, it is not. I was talking about the other side of the house. It's right now it's on the southeastern side. I was actually talking about the western side, but there are some steep slopes there. It still would be in violation because it would be in the side yard, but I think it would be completely screened from anyone entering and exiting the subdivision. And I believe that's where a lot of the complaints came for people coming in to the neighborhood and seeing the swing set where it was originally placed. I don't know how many complaints have come in since they've moved it, if any.
And technically, even if we did move it to what was considered rear yard, you would still see it when you came in the neighborhood.
That's probably true. Yeah.
Because we are surrounded by 3 streets. There's no getting around that.
You are the entry to the neighborhood.
We are. We love it.
All right. Does anybody else have any more questions for Aaron at this time? No?
No, I don't.
Okay. Aaron, I'm gonna mute you here. We have one other person still hanging on here with us. Pat Lowe's. I'm gonna allow you to talk.
Is Pat for or against? We'll go with the fours first.
Okay. Pat, if you are for
the variation,
this variance, can you raise your hand in the chat box? Okay. So if you are against this variation, could you please raise your hand in the chat? Okay, Pat, I'm gonna unmute you here. I'm not sure. Hi, is this Pat? Hey, Dean. I think you're still hanging out there. I've tried to unmute her. Does this mean
So yeah,
she's muted on her end?
What we can do is just ask to unmute. They actually have to unmute themselves.
Okay.
So I did do that. They should have a prompt up if they wish to speak. They should be able to unmute now.
Okay. Okay, I made it to 60 in my head. I'm trying to give you some time, Pat, if you were there. We are going to go and move on here. Does anyone from the board have any more questions for either John or Aaron? No, okay. At this time, we are going to move into deliberation for the board and close for testimony. Byron, I'm going to start with you. Oh, you're on mute.
Can you hear me? Am I okay?
I can hear Jack.
Okay, good. All right, just making sure.
I'm off mute now.
Okay.
I find this site incredibly difficult for them to do anything with their own property. I mean, and it's just a wonder that they've got all the trees to shelter themselves from Montgomery Road. I know what an issue that presents to a homeowner. So if we don't hear and we don't have neighbors at this meeting protesting this, recognizing that they may have their own subdivision restrictions that may apply, notwithstanding what we do here, I'd be inclined to grant this variance on the simple fact that the site is very difficult to use for your own private purposes and for raising a child. So I think they're doing as well as they can with the situation they have, and I think we shouldn't let the law get in the way of that.
Byron, I agree with you in part. Here's what I want to know from John is, can we give them a conditional approval provided that they do follow through with the proper screening with landscaping? And I don't know who's the judge to say what is sufficient, et cetera, but I heard Mrs. Metz say they want to move it back toward the fence, away from the front of the road, add more screening. Just building on what Byron said, is a very difficult lot, but it is also the entrance to the community. And I think given that there's a responsibility to go a little extra in terms of making sure that any concerns of what a swing set in the front yard, technically side yard, whatever you want to call it, would raise, I think the Metzes have the ability to do some things with some shrubbery to be able to mitigate that concern.
Yeah, you are absolutely permitted to have conditions as a part of approval. I'm sure this board has done that before. I would just recommend that you make them very specific. I wouldn't have anything vague like additional screening. I would have something like 5 evergreens to be planted between the swing set and Symmes Creek Drive. Something very specific that's easy for Emily to come out and enforce. If you want the swing set moved, I recommend you give a distance. I know that would be hard at this time.
Yeah.
To give a distance from the corner of the home or the corner of the deck, or to say it needs to be moved 5 feet further west from its current location. But again, I just recommend you come up with conditions that are very specific so that we can enforce them and write them into the resolution.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, I have two thoughts about that. One is I'd be satisfied if they put in 2 trees of any type that they choose. It's their property and their trees. And I wouldn't mind drawing a box on their site plan that allows them to place that swing set within it. That would also include the current location. That I don't think we need to force them to move it from where it is, but if they choose to, somewhere within that box would be okay.
You know, what I was thinking, Byron, is building on that point is I would ask Mrs. Metz to show us on the plot plan, because she lives on the property, where she would move it, and then tell us, I would put 3 pines, I would put 2 trees, I would do whatever, and let her define the solution. And then if that looks good, that's what the plan would be. Because it is her property. What we're looking for is appropriate screening and distance from the road. I'd let her make that as a recommendation to us right here tonight. Just say, this is where I'm going to put it.
Let me add something if I may. So right now the swing set sits, I believe, about 30 feet from the road. If they were to push it back any further, that wouldn't be an issue. They're already getting a variance. You would be granting them a variance in the side yard. If they pushed it closer to the road, then that variance is greater. So I don't believe we need to draw a box. You could say it can be located where it is or pushed even further west, because that lessens the amount of the variance, in my opinion.
Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, Mrs. Metz.
Yeah, my plan was to, like, in no way go past that pine tree, and we knew the pine tree was 30 feet from the street. So that's how we measured it out, that as long as we knew we were west of the pine tree, we knew we were at least 30 feet from the street. We can't really push it too much further west, but we were going to push it a little bit further south, closer to the deck, putting it a little under the big pine trees a little bit more. Right. But yeah, and then yeah, we would have no problem saying yes, we would add, because we already planned on adding some vegetation, obviously knowing once, you know, what the decision was before we knew where to place things, obviously. We would have no problem saying that. But yeah, I mean, if anywhere where it's at now, or the only place we would move it, we wouldn't move it any closer to the street. It would just be moving closer to the house, just a little bit, just to keep it away, as far away from the wooded area as possible, just because of the chance of trees falling. But yeah, it would never go anywhere closer to the street than where it is right now.
So would you be willing, if we grant this variance, to help us write the variance by just giving us the wording? Like you said, we would move it south and west, you know, maybe feet, and we're going to put in 4 trees around it, so that we have something, as John said, that Emily can come out and say, yes, you've complied. And that's not an issue of vagueness around, well, what is sufficient screening, et cetera.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the screening, however, you know, it needed to be worded, that's fine. In terms of the placement, in the plans that I submitted, there was actually a drawing showing where we plan to move it to, where it's a little bit closer to the house. I don't know if that's, it's not in the staff report. It was what I submitted to the Hamilton County office. There was a fairly crude drawing.
I don't think we've seen that.
It was in the second packet. It was before the staff report. And she put her proposed placement of swing sets. It came through dark for us.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what that was.
That was my
I thought my eyes were failing me. I'm like, help me.
Yeah, unfortunately, the UPS store didn't do a very good job of copying it when I was taking it down there at the last minute.
All right. Okay. You understand what we're trying to do here, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
And I do, and they weren't able to join, but I did have letters from the neighbors in favor of the swing set, by the way.
How many?
Oh, well, one, because that was the only one that actually gave me the letter, because the others were going to join, but then they didn't get a chance to join, or they joined and then they dropped off. So.
Well, if you're looking for some advice on how to word a condition, you can certainly reference this document as part of that condition. Your condition could say, the location of the swing set shall be placed in the location provided in the document provided by the applicant, or further south and west towards the deck,
Right.
but shall be no closer to Symmes Creek Drive than currently located. Something to that effect.
And which is more than 30 feet at the moment. Yeah.
Right.
I had a question about the screening. You had mentioned river birch. Would you consider something that would give it a little bit more screening, such as like an evergreen, or maybe?
We have a lot of evergreens at our house, and not all of them are doing well.
Okay. There's another screening that that I've seen used very effectively, and that's that Allegheny Viburnum, and it's almost evergreen, and it grows very, very fast. Okay. And I think it's considered a shrub, although you have to kind of keep it cut, but it is a good screening medium, let's put them that way. So anyway, there's just something that would either an evergreen in there someplace would be nice. Let's put it that way.
My only reason for the river birches is because you buy them already fairly large, so they're pretty quick screen coverage. You don't buy you don't, well, at least the ones we looked at. I wouldn't buy like little saplings. It would be the ones that are already fairly large, just because we lost so much of the tree coverage with the trees that fell down. So that was our plan there. But that we were also planning to do with the wooded area as well. So yeah, we could do. And I'm open to suggestions. It's just some of the evergreens on our property are not doing very well. I don't know if it's because of the soil, but a lot of them are not healthy.
Okay.
No, there's also a disease going around. So
yes. And we did plant those, and there's some that are very large and very beautiful and have worked really well, but the other ones and the ones you're speaking, I think the ones we have in our yard are junipers.
So I just want to clarify here, Ralph or Darcy, do you guys have any more questions for Aaron? Should we vote and then, or discuss among ourselves and make sure we're in agreement and then talk about the motion?
I'm in agreement with everything that's going on. I mean,
okay.
I'm okay even where it's located right now, as long as she adds some added, not shrubbery, but evergreens or something to add some extra coverage from the entry.
Absolutely.
Darcy, are we all on the same page and working towards the same goal here?
Yes, and as far as the vegetation, I would like to see it specified either as evergreens or a shrubbery that would provide good screening like that viburnum. It's just.
John, at this point, could you scribe for us in good BZA legalese the appropriate proposal? Because I think I would get lost, and I don't know about Ralph, he might get lost too, but with all this conditional stuff, could you do that?
Yeah, so it sounds like this board is okay with the current swing set location. I just want to make sure that we're on the same page. And you're also okay with...
No, I'm not. I want her to move it more toward the pine trees like she suggested in that drawing.
Okay.
Which is what we prefer anyway, so I'm fine with that.
Okay. So then the condition should read as such, or close to this, that the swing set shall be moved further. We could come up with a distance. I don't know, Ms. Metz, if you know what the distance would be, 10 feet further southwest or 5 feet further southwest. Do you have any idea of that distance?
I'm checking to see if I had it in the drawing that I sent.
Yeah. The problem of that is you'll almost never know where the swing set used to be, and that we're probably in a better position to say 35 feet at least from the street.
That's a good way to do it too. Absolutely.
Yeah, we can't get 35 feet away, but we can get 30 feet away just because it'll hit the house or the deck. Okay. But basically it would be almost, so off the back deck, there's a fence that extends about 17 feet off the back deck. It's at that corner where we would place the corner of the swing set as close to that corner as physically possible. There's some very large evergreen shrubs right there already, but as close to the corner of that fence post as possible is where we were hoping to move it to.
Why don't we use the street as a reference? That's more a permanent fixture. And I think if 30 feet off the roadway is sufficient and agreeable, maybe that's a better way to state it. Not to tell John what to do.
Maybe no less than 30 feet
Yeah.
away, and then she can put it where she wants.
Yes.
Okay. And then adding vegetation, which we were already hoping to do anyway, so we're fine with that.
Yeah, and again, I recommend a number.
Should we say a minimum of 3 trees?
There's not much space between that 30-foot and the woods.
How many would you put in, Aaron?
It depends on what we're talking about. If we're talking about like viburnums, I would say 3 because they're smaller shrubs. 3 trees, no, because you wouldn't be able to place trees that close together.
So what's your preference?
I would say the viburnum is obviously easier. So, and it's probably going to cover more.
All
So 3 large, I mean, I don't want to say evergreen shrubs just because if that's not technically classified as, well, it says evergreen shrub. I'm looking at it on Google.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Let's just say 3 viburnum.
Okay.
Or 3 shrubs.
3 viburnum.
I like that.
And hope that it's not one of those plants that's now officially banned in the state of Ohio, like pear trees are.
No, viburnums are still viable.
They're still alive, allowed. Okay. We've gone to Natorps looking to buy a pear tree to match a pear tree at our old house before we sold it. And they're like, yeah, we can't sell you those. I'm like, I did not know that.
So I think I have the condition if you want me to take a stab at it, and then when you make your motion, you could just reference the condition that I've stated, since I'm sure this is being recorded, if you'd like.
That would be
Absolutely.
great.
Okay. So I think the condition shall read that the swing set shall be located no less than 30 feet from the right of way of Symmes Creek Drive, and that a minimum of 3 viburnums shall be planted between the swing set and Symmes Creek Drive.
Well, actually, between the swing set and Montgomery.
Okay, you're going that way.
Yeah.
That's different than what I kind of envisioned. So that would be up to the board.
Yeah. Isn't the visibility from Symmes Creek the issue?
No, the visibility is coming off of Montgomery. When you come down Symmes Creek, it's coming off Montgomery. That's the question. Because when you turn on Montgomery and turn right on Symmes Creek, it's coming from there. That's the problem. So as you're driving down Symmes Creek, but it's the view between Montgomery and the house that's the problem.
I'm going to share the screen again, if I may.
Yes, please.
So as you're coming off from Montgomery and you're entering the neighborhood, it's because that swing set's right at the, where that pine tree is right there, it's that view.
But the way I think I had the condition worded, the trees would still be between Symmes Creek and the swing set. Mm-hmm. Even though the view shed might be more of an angle from Montgomery, the trees are still between the swing set and Symmes Creek Drive. So if you were to draw a line all the way out to Montgomery where the swing set is, as long as the trees were within that line, that 30 foot line, should be fine.
Yeah, so the swing set would be about where the edge of that pine tree shadow is. You see, right, not the little pine tree, but the big pine tree shadow. The swing set's going to be right there. I was thinking that the coverage needed to be between the lone pine tree and the wooded area. Like, yeah, between that tiny pine tree to the left to the wooded area.
I still think the condition works, but
okay,
anyone can correct me if I'm wrong.
So what she's saying is it's going from the little pine tree, going west, almost like a straight line, blocking the view.
Between the pine tree and the letter A.
Yeah.
But really between the pine tree and where the brown starts, because that's the wooded area.
I mean, that's what it's doing.
But it's the little
blocking the view between Montgomery and Symmes Creek Drive.
Right.
But you're talking the little pine tree, not the large pine tree.
Yeah, the little pine tree.
So the hedgerow would be parallel to Montgomery, not parallel to Symmes Creek. How does that work?
I mean, we could do it the other way, but I think the problem is coming as you're entering the neighborhood, you would see the swings. If you put the hedgerow from the little pine tree and ran it parallel with Symmes Creek, when you come in the entrance, you're still going to see the swing set because you're going to be able to see right through to where the swing set is at the edge of that big shadow. But if you run the hedgerow from the little pine tree parallel to Montgomery Road, it blocks that view. You wouldn't see it until you pass the little pine tree. I'm not good either way. I'm just thinking in terms of.
I agree. I agree with what you're saying.
So we could.
You won't see it when you're pulling into the neighborhood at all.
Yeah.
It'll be blocked.
So we could change the condition to read, instead of planted between the swing set and Symmes Creek Drive, the condition could say be planted between the swing set and Symmes Creek Drive or Montgomery Road.
That's fine.
If that works for the board.
Yeah, that's fine. Or perpendicular to Symmes Creek Drive.
Mm-hmm.
If you wanted to say that.
Okay.
Okay. So it sounds like we have our condition correct. Who would like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we grant the variance for the relocation we grant the variance for the relocation of the swing set at 8988 Symmes Trace Court to be located no less than 30 feet from Symmes Creek Drive, off of Symmes Creek Drive, and that a minimum of 3 viburnum be planted 30 feet, more than 30 feet perpendicular to Symmes Creek Drive going west.
John, is that pretty close to your verbiage?
Yes, it is. It just doesn't give you the flexibility to allow the viburnums to be planted where I originally thought the view shed was the issue. But I think the property owner obviously knows the view shed issue better than I do. The way I had worded, it gives the property owner the chance to put them between Montgomery Road and the swing set, or between Symmes Creek Drive and the swing set. It's a little bit less specific than Mr. Wolf's condition, but I'm just here to try to assist.
Well, it's going to be there because you're blocking the view when you're making that turn from Montgomery Road into Symmes Creek Drive. You would see the little pine tree and then the viburnum right next to them. And then in front towards the house would be the swing set. So you blocked the view in a couple of years. It'll be blocked totally.
Yeah, I think both conditions solve the problem. I just think Mr. Wolf's is a little bit more specific.
Yeah.
I guess if they say it between, either between the swing set and Montgomery Road or between the swing set and Symmes Creek.
Yeah.
Either way, which I'll do both if I have to.
Yeah,
although, I mean, from Symmes Creek, if it was in our true, what's counted as a rear yard, which really isn't technically a rear yard, you would see it from Symmes Creek anyway. So, because as
right.
By nature of a corner lot, you're going to see a swing set from the street, even if it were legal.
Right. So we should say,
Yeah. My plan is to put, I want to block that off anyway, just to give it a little bit more wooded privacy so we don't see that intersection as much to begin with. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think saying that we're still giving I think the owner has good intentions, going to block the view the best she can for protection anyway. So, I could get real specific, but by asking for a plan, but we're trying to make one up right now.
Yeah.
So.
This is Byron. Let me stick in my 2 cents worth. I would hate to have anybody complain about whether she's got viburnums in her yard or some other kind of tree or shrub. And so I'd rather not be so specific, and let's let her do viburnums. That sounds like a plan she's got, but I don't think we should be dictating that in our condition to this variance. And so I'd rather simply say that there be trees or shrubs, and you could say 2 or 3, whatever it is you want, that would be used as visual screening. And then you've already got the locations for those specified. I just don't like any viburnums.
Yep.
Yeah, because who knows, in 5 years they could be considered invasive and have a disease, and you can't plant them anymore. So.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Aaron, when you do your landscaping, I would just be mindful of the view coming down Symmes Creek Drive, just so that you don't have an issue down the road with somebody saying, hey, I can still see this swing set.
Well, they're going to still see it, and you're always going to see it, even if it was in what was technically our rear yard. You would still see it coming down Symmes Creek.
I understand, but there's some.
Yeah.
You saw on the last one, if you were here.
Oh yes, I was there.
Okay.
We actually contemplated buying a house on Timberlake Drive, so I'm a little glad that we didn't, because that sounded a little bit contentious.
Okay. So, just be mindful. All right.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm okay with what you've got there. I think, Byron, that's a good ad.
So do we need someone to restate the motion?
Who's writing it down?
I've been writing it down. I could take a stab at it if you'd like.
Perfect.
All right. So that the swing set shall be located no less than 30 feet from Symmes Creek Drive, and that a minimum of 3 trees or shrubs shall be planted 30 feet from Symmes Creek Drive, perpendicular heading towards the west. Perpendicular to Montgomery Road, heading towards the west.
No, parallel to Montgomery Road.
Why don't we just take that last part out and say appropriately placed to provide sufficient screening?
From the entrance from Montgomery Road?
Yes.
Because if not, I'm going to have to screen it on all 3 sides.
Yeah, I don't think you need to say exactly where the trees need to be in the distance from the street.
Yes, appropriate screenage to block the view as from entering from Montgomery Road.
Yeah, to provide sufficient screening.
Okay.
And if that comes up, we can always discuss it. But I think
yeah,
it's your yard, it's your neighbors.
Thank you.
So do we have a completed motion?
Try again, Darcy.
Hear it, Darcy. Tag.
No, I'm confused with the 30 feet and the 3 and whatever.
Well, I can try again if you'd like.
Okay.
I'm here to help. All right, that the swing set shall be located no less than 30 feet from Symmes Creek Drive, and that a minimum of 3 trees or shrubs shall be planted to provide sufficient screening. Done.
Perfect.
Perfect.
It's vague, but I think that's the best we're going to do.
I second that, Ms. Harlow. I second it.
Okay. Luann, are you ready for our roll call?
Just give us a thumbs up if you're ready.
Luann, we're back to not hearing you. So we will just start, if that's okay. Okay. I vote yes to approve the motion. Jack,
Yes.
Ralph,
Yes.
Byron,
Yes.
Darcy,
Yes.
the motion carries.
Perfect.
Thank you guys very much.
You're welcome.
Thank
We're
you.
very happy to be living here. This is our forever house. We're never moving until our daughter goes to college, and then we have to move with her.
Understandable. Well, thank you very much. We still have some business to do here. That's just
I'll drop
housekeeping
off.
matters.
Thank
All right.
you very much.
Wow.
What a night.
Started out slow, but it really picked up the pace there.
Yes, it did. So Luann, this is kind of hard. I'm going to ask you, I guess, for thumbs up or thumbs down for old business. Do we
Maybe
have
it-
old business? No old business. Okay.
Okay, good.
Do we have any new business? Do we have new Kate? No.
No.
Okay.
No new business.
Wonderful. No new business. We need to approve the minutes from the June 1st, 2020 meeting. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
Wonderful. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then finally, we can move to adjourn.
Do we have any cases for next month?
No.
Okay.
She said there's no new business.
Okay, make sure, Luann, that you note that I didn't vote on the minutes because I was not at that meeting.
Thank you, Byron.
Okay.
All
I
right.
move we adjourn for the night.
I'll second.
I third.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay. Wonderful. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
I hope this wasn't
And
too
I'm
crazy
sorry
for the
I
first
was
time.
late trying to get
Well,
in.
it kind of was, but it was interesting.
All right.
I hope to see you all again soon. I'm going to log off now. Thanks again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, bud.
Bye, Luann. Thank you.